Thank you for staying with us. The people of Kirawa fled in panic after a recent Boko Haram attack that left the town largely empty. Militants burned the district leader's palace, a military barracks, and many homes, and even shared footage of the destruction. Now, locals say security forces had already pulled back from the area, so ordinary residents and vigilantes were left to fend for themselves. More than 5,000 people crossed into Cameroon seeking safety, and those who remain are suddenly homeless, frightened, and short of basics like food, water, and medical care. Now, the immediate need is humanitarian help, but without a stronger security presence, the risk is that militants will cement control and make the crisis far worse. This is a devastating development highlighting the persistent challenges faced by the Lake Chad Basin. And we now turn our attention to the immediate fallout and the long-term policy failures that have allowed this 16-year insurgency to intensify. And we have our guests with us, Wing Commander Musa Salmanu, retired, a security and development expert. We also have Agha Nwi-Fru, security expert as well. Thank you so much, gentlemen and lady, for joining us at this time.
Thank you.
It's a pleasure. So let's, let me begin with you, Agha Nwi-Fru. Sorry? All right, Agha, if you can hear me, let's begin with you. If you actually know about this and what has actually been happening in Borno State for the past 16 years, then you would understand. But in this case, apparently local leaders reported that the multinational joint task force, that's the NMJTF, withdrew from Kirawa after a previous attack in August, leaving the growing security vacuum. So can you speak to us, what does the MNJTF's failure to consistently hold ground in strategic border towns like Kirawa and Banki signal about the current effectiveness, funding, and also command structure of this crucial regional military effort?
Yeah, thank you so much for that question. I might not be, well informed about the internal management of the multinational joint task force. Yeah. But what I know is that I think they have been putting up a rather impressive front, fighting the non-state armed groups across the border. And it's not just in Nigeria, but even in Cameroon. It is thanks to the multinational joint task force that you have so many military posts or advanced military posts in various parts of these border communities. Areas where you would not have the regular army, you have advanced posts of the multinational joint task force there. And that is quite remarkable, because without their presence, I think that these communities will be left without adequate security. But now, is it enough? I think that what we are all seeing with the multiplication of attacks, especially this year, it's an indication that a lot more has to be done. Yes, something is done, which is good, but I don't think it is sufficient, because the enemy keeps on improving their tactics, they keep on getting better armed and better strategized to carry out more and more significant attacks. And so I think it is time for the multinational joint task force to be revamped, to be reboosted, and to be strengthened, so that they can fully carry out the task that they have set out to carry in these communities.
No,
Thank you.
Absolutely, I agree with you. You talked about, the terrorists improving their attacks, and becoming smarter. The insurgents, not only captured the town, but burned a military barracks. And it reminds me of, a similar event that happened years back in Gwoza. Same thing happened. And they also released a video showing fighters chanting, "Victory belongs to God." In fact, residents even told journalists, that Boko Haram is in control of Kirawa. So would you say, in your expert's opinion, would you say that the successful takeover of Kirawa and the earlier assault on Banki evidence of a new coordinated Boko Haram or ISWAP strategy to establish permanent cross-border operating bases, rather than simply relying on opportunistic raids?
I think that will be too fast to conclude, and I do believe that residents were gripped by fear and the panic of the moment to make utterances like Boko Haram is in control or they have taken over. I do not think that we can categorize that as a takeover. It was an opportunistic attack like every other attack that they have been carrying out in recent times. And I do agree that there is an increasing appetite or strategy by Boko Haram to take over or conquer localities, but I do not think that they are well organized for that yet, because when you see the nature of these attacks, yes, they are more audacious, they are more violent, but there is still significant disorder, I think, within the ranks of these non-state armed groups, and I believe that if our military or if the military is better armed, better equipped, better trained, then they would easily tackle these terrorists. I mean, when we look at the way they attack, they still come, like the thief in the night to carry out their activities. And it is true that increasingly they are targeting military positions, but the number one victims are still the civilians, the inadequately armed or unarmed civilians. So I would not jump to the conclusion that we are dealing with a takeover or, conquering Kirawa kind of situation. It is another sporadic attack. Yes, large scale, large impact, but there is still a possibility to contain and eradicate Boko Haram.
All right, Agha. Now, speaking of unarmed civilians being victims, more than 5,000 people have reportedly fled into Cameroon. What immediate measures should the Cameroon and Nigerian governments coordinate at the border to prevent new waves of civilian harm or even secondary displacement?
Yeah, thank you so much for that question. Civilian movements is something we have observed across the border, both ways. When there is an attack in Cameroon, when there is a very violent or high-scale attack in Cameroon, inhabitants cross to the other side of the border into Nigeria and vice versa. And it is important to highlight here that these are the same communities. They are just separated or divided by geography or by geographical demarcations, but they speak basically the same language. They have family members, they marry, across boundaries and so on. So these are people who do business together, who live basically together. So these movements we have observed over the years, and I'm not saying that it is because these are close communities that it is okay for them to be terrorized and displaced regularly or frequently from their homes. I do believe that it is important for both governments to coordinate. After the attack of Kirawa, we saw the governor who came, and after his speech, after his words of sympathy, but also appeasement, we observed that everyone went back. I mean, I can tell you that on the Cameroonian side, you do not have the Nigerians that came. They have all gone back, after the governor came. Okay. But should the governor only come after there has been an attack, what can be done to even prevent these attacks? And a few moments ago, I was talking about the security aspect, strengthening security, but also it is not just about security. It is also a social problem. Resolving the social, or that the deplorable social situation in these communities, most of these communities in northeast Nigeria along the border, like in Cameroon, lack the very basic necessities for life to go on smoothly. And in the midst of all of the frustration, the poverty, you have radicalization that takes place easily. Young people are radicalized continuously. We have to stop that. And it is important to dialogue with these people, understand their challenges, understand what exactly the state can do to support them, to put an end to this radicalization, but also to strengthen the local population to be able to push away these rebels, these terrorists, because the local population is the number one victim. They are the ones who feel the pain when this happens. So besides strengthening security, I think there is a huge role to be played in enhancing dialogue with the people in these border communities, but also addressing their basic grievances.
Okay, now just before we wrap up, you said most of those who actually fled to Cameroon have actually gone back since the governor, came into town and all that. But then if he hadn't come and if they were still in Cameroon, what would have been the regional diplomatic implications, if Cameroon was forced to host a large, sustained influx? Would it have sparked bilateral ties or even sparked securitarized responses?
Yeah, I think that Cameroon and Nigeria have very good relationships, bilateral relationships. I do not think it would have sparked any issue between both states, but I do believe that it would have created a humanitarian disaster, because these people, when they moved into Cameroon, I mean, from the images we saw, you had women on foot, men, on their bicycles, pushing their belongings in trucks, some of them carrying on their heads, with literally nowhere to stay. And so most of them were camped in the public schools, out in the nature. A few of them could live with host populations, and a vast majority were just left in the open. And imagine if that had to continue for a week. Then they move from having nowhere to stay to maybe having no food to eat because their supplies would have depleted. And this is happening at a time where Cameroon itself is already dealing with a lot on its plate when it comes to the humanitarian crisis. And I will just maybe round up here to say that with the funding cuts that the humanitarian community worldwide is already experiencing, I think if these people had to stay in Cameroon, it would have definitely put a huge strain on the humanitarian resources that organizations currently have.
All right. Well, thank you so much. Such a very interesting conversation. Agha Nwi-Fru, security experts. We appreciate you for your time.
Thank you so much. It's always a pleasure, and looking forward to other conversations with you.
Absolutely, Agha. Thank you.